My name is Keith Cotterman. I'm the Senior Systems Engineer for Aerohive Networks, covering TOLA. I support Tim Adams, our Regional Sales Manager, Kanishka Ramyar, our Commercial ISR, and Andrew Brown, our SLED ISR. In this video, we're going to discuss HiveManager SSH Availability. You can find this video along with all of our other videos at Go to Stage, search for NorTola, or on YouTube, and there search for Aerohive NorTola. In this video, we're going to discuss what is HiveManager SSH Availability and how to use it, what devices support SSH availability, and where in HiveManager can you find SSH availability. I'll also give you a demo of using both SSH availability as well as CLI access. CLI access is very similar to SSH availability, but instead of having a full SSH session to run, you're able to run one CLI command on one device or one CLI command on multiple devices. The big difference between SSH availability and CLI access is the support for the devices there. So SSH availability is supported on any devices that you can manage inside HiveManager. That's our access points, our routers, our switches, both the older SR 2000 series or our newer 2200 or 2300 series. You can also use this on Dell N-series switches as well. Now that's different from CLI access. CLI access is only available for devices that are running HiveOS. So that would be our access points, our routers, VGVA, the older SR 2000 series or 2100 series that ran HiveOS. CLI access will not be available on the Dell switches or on the newer SR 2200 or 2300 switches. Let's take a look at it. So I've logged into a HiveManager account where we've got some devices available for us. So how does SSH availability work? Well, what we're doing is we're using HiveManager to push a command down to a device and asking it to initiate the SSH session outbound. This should allow us to get through most firewalls regardless of security policies. And with that connection outbound, we're going to assign that device a public IP address with a randomized port, allowing us to connect to it from anywhere in the world. So if you have a device that is internet enabled and you can access HiveManager, and the device that you're wanting to get SSH availability into is online, you're able to use this. Same thing goes for CLI access. We need to have the device online and manageable from within HiveManager. Again, the difference is SSH availability is creating a true SSH tunnel with that public IP address and randomized port that you can then use in Terminal or PuTTY or Secure CRT, whatever your application of choice is, to have full CLI access into that device. Whereas SSH availability is using HTML5 in HiveManager to allow you to run one command at a time. So because we're assigning devices public IP addresses with randomized ports, there are obviously some security concerns around that. We would encourage you to use SSH availability when you need to, and make sure that when you're done that you terminate or close that SSH session down. Now, if you notice here, we do have an SSH session column available. This is going to allow you to see which devices currently have SSH sessions open. If you don't see this column available to you underneath monitor and devices, come over to the column picker icon and then search for SSH status in the column picker section here and make sure that that's checked and enabled. There are two ways to access SSH availability. One of those is through the device specific settings. So if we were to click on the host name of the device here, in this case we have an AP130. Underneath additional settings or additional device settings, you'll see SSH. And from here, you can choose how long you want the session to be open and enable this from here as well. Now, again, we do give you a warning here at the top because you are assigning the device a public IP address. You've got a link here to explain that to you in more detail and give you some of the security precautions around that. The other way that we can gain access through SSH availability is underneath the Tools tab. So if we come to Tools, and underneath Utilities, look for SSH availability. From here, we can select whatever device we want. In this case, we'll take a look at one of our SR2208 switches, and we just need to select the device and click Run. From here, this will bring us back to a familiar screen that we saw underneath the device-specific settings. Again, we're going to choose the time that we want the session to stay open and click on Enable Session. So now HiveManager is pushing that command down to the device, the 2208, asking it to create an outbound session. Once that session is created through HiveManager, it's going to provide us with that randomized port and the public IP address. You can see this information here. Now, if you're using and we're using OpenSSH to accomplish this, which is actually running between HiveManager and the device. If you're using a Mac and you've got terminal available, you can just simply copy and paste this out. If you're using some other application, you may need to take that information and manually put it in. In this case, I am on a Mac, so we're going to open up terminal, paste that in, hit enter. And now we've got a prompt here asking us if we really want to create this connection. So yes, we're going to say. Now we're being prompted for the admin password here. So the admin password could be defined in a few different areas. You can define an admin username and password on a device-specific basis. Again, click on the host name of the device from monitor and devices, and then underneath configuration, there's an area there to define the admin name and the password on a per devices basis. I would encourage you not to do that. Depending on how many people are working inside HiveManager, you may end up with different passwords set on different devices, or just the fact that you're going to have to edit multiple devices to set that. So we encourage you, if you're going to define a single admin name and password for all devices, to do that through your network policy. And so we'll take a look at that now. So if we come up to configure and we edit our network policy, underneath additional settings, and then underneath policy settings, you'll see device credentials. From here, you can define an admin name and a password. And so now any device that has the A3 lab network policy, or whatever network policy you have available in your HiveManager, any devices that have that network policy assigned, you'll be able to log into them either through the console port or through SSH or Telnet if you're using that with these credentials. Now, if you don't have credentials defined in your network policy or on a device specific basis, then HiveManager is going to generate a password for you automatically. The username is still going to be admin, but in order to find that password, you're going to need to come up to your global settings. So look for your name in the upper right-hand corner, and then left click on global settings. Now over on the left, underneath administration, we have device management settings. And in here, there will be an automatically generated password that you can use to, again, gain either Telnet, SSH, or console access into the device. This password by default is going to be a randomized password made up of random characters. Typically, it's not going to be a common word, so it's going to be a bit harder to remember. You can change it here as well. So the hierarchy is if a device doesn't have a admin name and password defined on the device specific settings itself or inside the network policy, you're going to use this password. If you define a password in your network policy, that is going to override this password. If you define a password on the device itself, that's going to override what is in the network policy as well as what's underneath global settings. So you need to be familiar with where you're defining these passwords and which one you're going to need to use. You can change this password here to make it whatever you want, but again, just keep in mind what supersedes what as far as global settings compared to network policy compared to the device itself. So now that we have an SSH session open, this is a full SSH session. So we're going to go ahead and log in with the admin password. Oh, that worked out well. Okay, fair enough. Let's go create another session. So I'm not sure what's going on with terminal there, but we'll work around that. You know how these things go. So although that session was terminated inside of terminal on my Mac, that doesn't necessarily mean that the SSH session is closed. It could still be open. So this is where the SSH status column becomes beneficial from the monitor tab. So we're going to come back to monitor and devices and see if that session is still open. And here you can see that it is still open. It's running for 25 minutes. So we'll create another session and then come back and close this one down. So since the session is open, we need to end this session. So again, we could do that either by coming to tools, or we could come into the device specific settings here, scroll down underneath additional device settings and SSH, and then disable this. So let's come up to tools, SSH availability from here. Let's see if we can get a session open to an AP30. Okay, so we've got a public IP address and a randomized port. We'll copy that, open up terminal. Now we've got the command prompt here. There we go. So now we have access. I believe what happened previously was just that terminal timed out on me there. So now we've got the command prompt for the AP130 that is at site 1 on floor 1. From here, we can run any CLI command that we want. So maybe we want to see show DNS to see what DNS settings are available or configured on the device. An important command would be show CapWeb client, so we can see what state the CapWeb connection is in. CapWeb is what the AP uses to communicate to HiveManager, so we can see the CapWeb client is enabled. The transport mode is UDP, meaning that we're using that 12,222 port, which is what the AP uses by default. You may see HTTP over TCP here. That just means that UDP 12,222 was blocked on your firewall, and so the AP is using 4430 over port 80 to communicate with HiveManager. And you can see that the run state is connected securely to the CapWeb server. If this was not connected, the AP wouldn't be manageable from within HiveManager, and we wouldn't be able to initiate this tunnel. Here's the IP address of the access point, and then the information, a CapWeb server IP, and the primary CapWeb server name for your HiveManager. Okay, so that's SSH availability. Again, full CLI access from anything that can be managed inside HiveManager, whether it be switches, routers, or access points. So let's go ahead and close that session. And again, we close the session here inside terminal, but that doesn't mean that the session is still closed inside of HiveManager. Notice that the session is still up and running. So again, because of security and because you're giving it a public IP address, always make sure that you shut down your SSH tunnels when you're done with those. We're going to go ahead and click on disable SSH. And now we'll take a look at CLI access. So again, CLI access is only going to be supported on devices that are running Hive OS. That could be an access point, an older switch, even a VGVA if it was online, we could take a look at that, or our XRs or BRs, our routers as well. So we'll choose one of our, we'll go back to the access point here. And now in order to find CLI access, you're going to select your access point first, and then come up to actions, and you'll notice that underneath advanced, you have CLI access. Now again, depending on the device, it may be a little bit different. So with an access point, we come to advanced and we have CLI access. If I were to select a VGVA here and come up to action, you can see that there's no advanced for the VGVA, so you just have CLI access available there. So if we select CLI access, we're going to get this HTML5 window inside of HiveManager. And notice that we've got one device open here. And from here, we can run a single CLI command. Now, also, not all CLI commands are going to be supported from CLI access. Pretty much our basic commands or any of your more advanced CLI commands may not be supported here. If it's not a supported command, you're going to get an error message across the top of the screen. So we could say show run to show me the running config, hit enter or click apply. And now within this window, we have our entire running config on this device here. Now we can also multi-select these. So I've got an access point here. We'll select one of our other APs, the Atom access point. Now come up to actions in advanced and CLI access. And now notice that you have two devices here on the left-hand side and allowing us to quickly move between those. So we could do a show station to see what client devices are currently connected on this particular access point. And here you can see we don't have any clients connected. Now we can navigate down to our Atom access point, run that same command. And here you can see that we do have some client devices connected to this particular access point. Here's the MAC address, the IP address, channel they're connected on. So notice we're on Wi-Fi 0.2. This Atom access point, or AP30, has two static radios. So Wi-Fi 0 is indicating 2.4 gigahertz. And the .2 is representing a virtual interface, or the SSID, which in this case is Omega. We can see the data rates that's supported on these devices, as well as the UPID here. So this is two ways to gain CLI access into the devices from within HiveManager. My recommendation is if you just need to run one command from a device or from multiple devices, CLI access does a great job for that, assuming that it's running Hive OS. If you need to work inside of the CLI for any amount of time, or you need to be able to run all commands and multiple commands back to back, then creating an SSH tunnel is probably going to be more valuable for you. So that's going to sum up the video here. Again, if there's anything that you'd like to see a how-to video created on, email me at kcotterman@aerohive.com with the subject line Aerohive How-To, and just explain to me what you'd like to see, and we'll add it to the queue and get that posted for you soon. You can find all of our videos at go to stage.com, search for North TOLA, or on YouTube, search for Aerohive North TOLA. Thank you.